All right, well, let's start with just you guys sharing who you are and what church you're at, and kind of maybe how long you've been doing it. Like when was your launch date? Maybe that would be whatever you can say. You know, it doesn't matter. Y'all will have the floor. So somebody start.
I'll go first. We started Harbor City Church about 5 years ago. We were launched out of Michael Memorial Baptist Church. We had a great, phenomenal relationship with our sending church, and for us that was key, having a solid base. And it's been a long, strange trip since then. We've moved about 7 times in 5 years, and now through God's grace we have a permanent facility. So that's the way up high bird's eye view. Tag, you're it.
I like the bird. It's a good bird.
It's a good bird.
I'm James, and our church is the church at 112. We meet in the back of Diamond Head is probably the best way to describe it. I was trained when Rod was trained, and we had a launch team, and our journey is to the point where we officially launched last year, because we needed a lot more runway than others do. And we're moving in Easter to a, not permanent, but our own space. We've been meeting in a daycare this whole time, so it's been neat to see the daycare change and transition to where now there's daycare stuff on the walls that we can't cover up. Like the other stuff we've got covered, but that stuff we can't. So it'd be neat for our own place. But yeah, I was in Bay St. Louis for several years before that, and I'm a Biloxi boy.
Sure. Back Bay Church, I'm Adam Bennett. Back Bay Church, we launched officially on August 5th, 2018. That's about 5.5 years. We're coming up on 6 years now. We were launched out of Bayview Baptist Church. I was a youth minister there for 11 years before we started Back Bay Church. It was about 1.5 years from the first conversation to actually having a first Sunday morning worship service. And so the first conversation was like February of 2017. So about 1.5 years later. We don't, I know all you permanent location guys here, we don't have necessarily a permanent location. We still rent space from a preschool and after school care place. And so, but it's very large. It's 20,000 square feet and lots of preschool rooms and a big gym and everything. So we just decided to settle down there for a while. We just signed a 4-year lease, so we're going to be there for a bit. So that's good. And yeah.
Steve Simon, I pastor Live Oak Baptist Church. We launched in August of 2018 as well. We actually moved here, me and my wife moved here. We didn't follow a traditional church planting, bring a bunch of people with you or bring a bunch of people to the first service. We parachuted in, we didn't know a soul. We started in our home, and we gathered a Bible study, and we eventually told those folks that we wanted to go brick and mortar. In August of 18, I think we were the same day, actually. I think we launched actually the same day. And we launched about 1 year and a couple months after that. And we've went through a couple renditions at this point. So I feel like I'm on my second church plant, but it's still the first one, but it feels like the second. And we're just continuing to work, and that's where we started.
And so as I ask questions, and the same when they ask questions, if we don't have to do all 4 has to answer each question. You don't feel like, nah, that's been covered.
We decided earlier that Adam's going to answer it.
Adam's answered it all. That's right. So, one of the things we're encouraging existing churches to do, I mean, as a convention, is that existing churches
you should engage in church planting in some way, shape, or form. So, but I'm guessing we wouldn't want to ask other churches to do what we're not also planning to do. So can you talk about, in your own DNA that you're building, how you're building a culture towards church plant? I'm guessing, are you building a culture towards being a planting church as you get to the place where you would be able to do that? So talk about that for a minute.
I mean, I think from like my perspective, the DNA that's built into me from past churches. We were sent by Riverbend Church out of Hernando, Mississippi. I was part of the Life Point Church as they planted in Senatobia, Mississippi, and that sort of DNA was just sort of baked in. And so out of LP, there's been 4 different plants that have planted out of LP. So that DNA is always there. And then I don't know if anybody thinks about this, but I think of like my capacity, right, as a leader, what my capacity is. I think if you said, Stephen, you're going to go to a 5,000 member church, that's not my capacity. If you said you were going to go to a 500 member church, I don't even think that's my capacity, right? I think it's 100 to 200, and then at 100 we're looking to plant somewhere else, to start a different work. So that's what we build to. We're far from that, but that's what we talk about. You know, even now, in where we're we struggle to get new people in, right? Like we struggle for visitors, we struggle for all those things. But we still continue to talk about it because we want to bake it into our culture. Because we want to be a sending church.
That's good. Anybody else follow up on that?
Actually interested in what you have to say.
You're interested in what I have to say?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I know that Michael Memorial's history of planting churches,
Yeah.
and you were sent out of them, so I'm interested.
Yeah, we did have a really healthy sending situation. You know, the leadership at Michael was very strong, very deep-seated. It's been there a while, and as the staff, we just challenged ourselves. We just said we think that church planting is something that God has put in us as a heart of the church, and we should be open to it, all of us. And so when we started praying through, we didn't know who would do it. We were open to any of us doing it, whether it's Tony or any of the other pastors. And so God in His sovereignty allowed me to pull the straw, and we've been communicating that we want to be a sending church, and talking through that and waiting how God can put those pieces together. There's a few things that have happened along the way that I'd perk up and say, well, there's an opportunity for us to maybe come along beside somebody. There's been other people that we've talked to, and we've said, well, we want to send you people, or we want to be ready to support you. One of the things that Michael did well was as a church, we basically said we want to send our best. And it was kind of scary for some people, because they're like, well, if you get rid of your best people, then there's this leadership vacuum at your church, and it's going to devastate the church. Well, actually, it was the opposite. And so there was this leadership vacuum that pulled out, because I had a lot of responsibility at that church. I was over a lot of the mission stuff and worship and things like that. And we had a couple other families that were leading Sunday school classes, and we had a few. There was about 4 or 5 families that said we'll go, and a lot of people thought we were crazy for leaving, and because I was in a really good, healthy place there. And when we kind of pulled up stakes and went away, there was a great thing that happened at our church, and that was this leadership vacuum that existed that people were afraid of. It just sucked up really quick. And it sounds kind of self-deprecating, but the church was so much better after we left, and it's true. And so it was scary. I think a lot of people are, even us as a church right now, if God were to lead us to get rid of our best. It would be tough. But I would say, hey, we got to do it. And that was the healthy place that we were at Michael, and knowing that, and being in a healthy place and taking a healthy, faith-filled step was to kind of look around and say, who's our best here? Let's get rid of them. We love you. You're awesome. Get the heck out of here. It kind of felt like that, and it was scary, but it was one of the best things that I've ever experienced. Is that good?
Yeah, I thought that was good. That was what I was looking for. In my situation, at Back Bay Church, what I'm trying to do is talk about church planting a lot. Obviously, we are one that's begun, but also just talk about other church planters, pray for them, talk about where we could go, say this is our mission strategy. Just really hammer that until we get at the actual opportunity to send or go. We use sending language a lot. Most of our people leave because of we have a lot of military in our church, and so most of them leave because of reassignments or jobs or something. But every time they leave, we pull them up into the church and we say, "Hey, we're sending you. We didn't pick the location. We're not picking the next call, but like we're sending you, and we're telling people we're making lists of places that we could potentially plant churches in the future." And so we make it a big part of our, I guess you could say, language, with the hope that when it does come time to send, we'll do that without question. And so just kind of building that in. Where I came from, Bioview, they had never planted a church, and I'm the only church still, in 65 years that they've ever sent out. And so I knew that was going to be very new for them. I tried my best. Hopefully I succeeded some to leave there with a good taste in their mouth, because I know that from when I first mentioned it, some of the responses I got was the only thing they really knew about church planting was church splits, or I'm angry now I'm going over here, or I don't like what's going over here, so I'm going to start something new. And I wanted it to be not I'm angry, I want to start something, or just I don't like it here, I wanted it to actually be a good thing, so that potentially Bioview would plant churches in the future as well. One of the things the leadership did, and they were very helpful and supportive, still are, Chris and Michael there, is that they, for years, we had been helping church planters. We've been using that church planting language and going on mission trips to specifically help church planters. And I think that's a big part of building the culture, is put it in your language, go help church planters, say that is our mission. And then, people will be, when you say, hey, we're doing it now too, they go, okay, that makes sense. So that's hopefully, yeah.
Good. Anything further?
Just practically speaking, for being a part of an established church, if we don't have that mindset of church planting or mission work, or fill in the blank, how do we do that? And so practically speaking, I would start to insert that language and have your leadership start to pray through that, and how can we assist? Because there are some folks that have leaders, like Michael Memorial does and did, and you can send them out, and there's other places like, man, we don't have that. What can we do? How can we serve? And so just praying through, how can we serve? Same thing with mission work. I remember being a part of a church once that been previously known for mission work, but after Katrina was not known for mission work. It was known for doing local stuff, which was great. And so, how do you build that in there, build that back? And it's being strategic with your language, with the leadership praying, and with eventually getting boots on the ground.
Yeah, that's good. So y'all kind of handle some of the things that I already had some other questions about, like, again, how would you start, and I think a great statement is start changing the language, start using the language of missions and church planting, that sort of thing. But I think there's also the fact that some of our churches are, we've got established churches, and some of them are in the difficult phase of revitalization. We would all say we're always in the process of revitalizing, but sometimes we're in a revitalization situation where we come in and we're in a declining situation and we're trying to figure that out. And we might say, well, you know, we don't have the resources, we don't have the ability to help with church planting. So any thoughts on how even an established church that might be struggling in some ways could still engage, or why it would even be beneficial for them to engage in some aspect of the church planting involvement?
Adam had a good thought on practical ways for churches at the end of our last meeting. Do you remember those? You don't remember those? Okay, I'll save it for you then. But I remember that. I don't remember some things. But before I do that, man, I would rather be a part of a church plant than a revitalization. Revitalization, of course, that's also the same people that are like a part of an established church, like, man, I couldn't be a church planter. Like, I couldn't be a revitalization, because it's just, you got to kill a lot of programs, a lot of stuff, and you have a lot more hills to die on than when you're on a church plant and you're on a jet ski and you get to turn whenever you want. Now you got to kill stuff, and people don't like.
Well, it's said, I don't know who said it, but they said it's easier to have a baby than raise the dead, so.
Unless you're Jesus.
You could also argue though that revitalization is church planting. It's just a harder road to hoe.
I think it's hard.
I mean, but you're still sort of tearing down vision, right, and building new vision. And I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but you know, vision casting is a huge part of. I always have to keep things in front of my people, right? Like keep the long-term goal in front of our people. And when you're in this revitalization, you have to sort of tear down the things that you know you were maybe doing, or some things are good, maybe you leave them, maybe you don't, but you have to recreate sort of a vision to gain back. So in some ways, revitalization it is replanting.
Yeah, because every church, we'll naturally drift towards complacency. We won't drift towards intentionality. We'll drift away from that. And so whether you're an existing church or a church plant, you got to, like he's saying, continue to put that out there in front of your people that, hey, you know, we got to fight against getting settled and complacent too much, and try to strive for it. I need to be better at that myself, where we are.
Regardless if we're doing planting, established, revitalization, discipleship is a primary component to how we're leading our churches. If you go into a revitalization situation, you could go in there with a program, with leadership structures, pipelines, mission strategies, all that stuff. But if we're not one-on-one discipling the congregation, it's all going to fail, and you're going to lose your job. You're going to go on to the next place. And it's hard work in the sense that we have to disciple every single person. Coffees, lunches, you know, you could try to do casting large nets, but talking to each person, because everybody has their own established traditions and everything. And eventually you just have to do the thing. You have to have the discipleship, the evangelism, the missions, and you take who's willing to go with you in that church, and I think you go and you do that. And some people might just decide to stay where they are and try to. I would think you try to love them where they are, and hopefully maybe one day they'll come along with you, but they might just stay there, you know. And because I know with my particular situation at Back Bay Church, I get a lot of people coming in. Everybody has their own baggage coming in, but at my church, they're coming in not from Southern Baptist backgrounds. I don't know what it is about me or our church, but most of the people that come to our church do not have Southern Baptist backgrounds. And so I'm doing a lot of one-on-one and family discipleship just to kind of reorient them. Okay, this is who we are. This is who we are theologically and doctrinally and structurally. I know you've never been to a church with membership before. Let me tell you what that's all about. And so kind of walking them through those things, because even with all the programs that you're going to have to die, either from just cutting them or starvation, there's the biblical doctrine that people have to come in contact with if they're going to have to, so they can come along. And so they look at those programs and they go, oh wow, okay, based on the scripture, now that I know, like, yeah, that program is just a program. It can, who cares, So I don't know if I answered the question. Did I answer the question?
If I was a replanter or revitalization ahead of a church that was doing that, I would maybe look for books on vision, because that's something, practically speaking, that would help me with if I want to get involved in helping while we're doing this, help another church plant. I would, and then I would pray through it, discipleship one-on-one, because then you can start to speak that language into other folks that are at your church, if it's a revitalization. But with the limited resources, what do? Adam's idea last time was, maybe you now too, I don't know. We don't have printers, right? We don't have printers. And so I ordered some church chairs the other day, and the lady sends me this document to sign digitally, and I go to sign it. 2 of them worked, and one of them I'm like, man, I can't sign this. I know my way around the computer, but I can't sign this. Oh, you have to print that one out. I don't have a printer. And so that's one way. You'd mentioned some other, accounting, like if a revitalization already has someone doing the books, hey, it's going to take like 10 extra minutes because church plants don't spend a lot of money. Can you do our books too? Or can you eventually train someone to help do our books? That kind of thing. Those are some practical ways. You had another one.
I said CPA, graphic design, online help.
Yeah.
Those are all just little technical things that that sometimes you can struggle with as being a single pastor, and a bunch of other people that don't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. The reason I mentioned those digital components is because whether we like it or not, we live in a digital age, and that we live with digital communication. And so if you're not communicating to our world digitally, then you're just not communicating to a lot of people. And so it's
It's kind of like when Rocky Balboa was screaming out. Yeah, it is. And
It's just like that.
It's just like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know where you're going with it, but it's not. And I love Rocky.
So I've got more questions because
Yeah, go ahead.
that's what I do. But I want you guys to be able, because some of you may have some specific questions, and I want us to make sure we have time for that. So let's just open the floor if you've got a question, specific or general. Yeah.
So we all know that church planning is really easy, and you don't need to convince us of that. But what's the number one thing that you underestimated, and what's the number one thing that you overestimated?
Sounds like a great question for you.
Adam?
y'all just need more time. Okay, so I'll say one of the things that I don't know if this is overestimating or underestimating. Man, I love my church so much. And I thought I loved my last church. And that's going to sound kind of bad, and it's on recording. And I do still love all the people there. They love me, and
You're all
man.
right. You're okay.
Yeah. Man, I have discovered kind of a new understanding of Paul's letters when he wrote how much affection he had. And I've felt that at a new level that I ever have. That was unexpected. I'm not sure if it was under or over, but it was unexpected. And then I guess I guess maybe a little bit of strain. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I think it's with wearing a lot of hats for a church planter, then also having that deep affection for everyone. You're wanting everyone to grow and to be better and to not go wrong and in the sense of in their lives. But then you also have a lot of practical things to do. And so for me, there can be some stress there. Not sure if I overestimated or underestimated. But again, it was stress that I hadn't felt ever in ministry, a type of stress. So never wanting to quit, but also wanting to quit at the same time.
Every Sunday.
And so, I don't even know if that made any sense, but there you go.
I would say for me, I overestimated the importance of all the training and planning because, we had even now I have so many documents in my computer that I just knew we were going to have to rally around years later, and that was going to be our growth trajectory and stuff like that. And through launching and then we had the model of set up and tear down in an elementary school, and we spent a ton of money on all the gear and stuff like that, and we did that for 6 months. And God's like, not that anymore. And so that was all of our planning, all of our everything. And so, I would say, so we started out in my house, and then we moved to, and it was like a whole different church there than it was when we were at the school. And then we borrowed space for a couple of years, and it felt like a whole different DNA there. And so all of my training and all of my planning and everything, it kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. And then we just started asking God how do we do this next phase? And now we're in a permanent facility, and so we're shifting our identity a little bit now. And so I would say I overestimated that, not to the point to where it's not important, because it's critical to do that part well. You have to know yourself, and you have to know your church. And what I underestimated was the toll that it was going to take on my family. My wife is, in my phone, her name is South Pole Wildcat. So she's tough. She's really tough. And she's been with me, obviously, every step of the way. But my kids, it's taken a toll on them. And, they literally lived at the church. We had church at our house. There was a couple of times where I was preaching holding my dog. And hadn't done that a whole lot. But overestimated some of the training, some of the, like, I got to stick to this, and kind of pull away from that and just say, okay, God, what do you want me to rally around? And I underestimated the toll of what it was going to take on my family. So.
Just speak again on that. It's not going to work. I don't even know if anybody can even estimate this properly. It's not going to work out the way that you planned it. You're going to build that plane. You're going to get that sucker on the runway. You're going to launch it, and it's going to immediately start falling apart. And you're going to have to start rebuilding the plane in the air. I mean, that's probably a better analogy. Another analogy that I don't like is calling it church planting, because when you plant everything, you sit back, you do some maintenance, but you watch it grow. That's what I like the terminology. You've heard me say it before, church birthing, because it's so much more like birthing a child and then taking care of that child. Unexpected issues, sicknesses, tragedies, stress, lack of sleep. I mean, like all of that, watching it grow, being so proud of it, but also wanting to quit at the same time. I mean, just like all of those things that come with raising a child, you have those types of things with that church.
It's like Rocky V.
No, it's not.
Did you just watch like a
He watched the marathon. Y'all, anybody else want to speak to that or another question?
I overestimated church people. So like when you, not like at my previous church, but like when you have church people on your team, and one of your trainers who's a little man, he's a maverick. He was so cool. He's not dead. Now he's playing another church, and he's like, hey, watch out for church people. What do you mean? It's like, because they might be pirates. What do you mean? He's like, because they might want to take over the ship. And so for me, investing so much time and resources into people, and the wrong people, sometimes can derail things pretty quick. But the thing I underestimated was calling. And so I was pulled into a meeting with another denominational church in the area recently, and they're like, hey, we're going to plant a church. I'm like, oh, cool. They're like, we want to ask you questions. I'm like, great. Which, come to find out, it's not planting, it's just doing another campus. But I remember looking at the guy and I said, hey, have you been called? Like, what was your calling like to plant this church? And instead of answering, like, he like kind of shirked back a little bit and let everybody else answer. One of the guys said Rocky Balboa. It's kind of like, no. And Rod had mentioned it before, and Adam's mentioned it. There have been so many times I wanted to quit. And the only thing that kept me going, the absolute only thing, was that God called me to do it. Otherwise, I would have been long gone.
That's the same way with the pastor in there, right?
Yeah, you can't pastor for a paycheck. I mean, some people can, but not here in the South as Southern Baptists.
Speaking of paycheck, I underestimated how much money we were going to need. If I had it all to do over again, I would have probably raised about $350,000.
Goodness.
So, it's a lot, but I've done the figuring, and that would have just put us in a much healthier place.
It's because you went on Fox News. You need to know where the liberals are.
And you know, what I mean,
Like
not-
Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, you did. You got money.
so it just
Adam, where were you to spend the money? Or where were the money, what would that would have made a difference in the early days?
Rebuilding the plane mid-flight.
yes, exactly.
He doesn't know.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You don't know.
I don't know
You don't know.
exactly. But one of the things is that
You don't know.
I don't know what I would exactly spend it on, but I do know what I would have spent it on in the last few years. Replacing equipment. It's great to have all that new equipment in the beginning, but then as you grow larger, you need new equipment because you've been doing tear down and set up, and it breaks. Now you got to replace it, and you're also growing, and so you need more resources. You're also ministering to more people, and so that again, and then when new people come in, one of the things I've noticed, at least in my context, is that they don't give right away. They take a while to kind of get used to you and to start. So you might be averaging 80 people, but you know it takes a while for that to establish any kind of regular kind of.
That's church people. Unchurched people, it takes them longer to start giving.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like the concept of giving to a church is like, you know, we get a lot of those too.
But you can't preach on tithing because I left that one church because they preached on tithing.
Yeah, and so I think having those opportunities to just say yes to ministry, yes to missions, as opposed to kind of pulling back, because man, we're running, you know, and it was difficult about midway through to go from run to go. All right, we will run again if we can pay for it.
Somebody else question?
Steve, what made you strategically go to Long Beach?
I put a map on the coast and I threw a dart.
Yeah.
There
you go.
No, I mean, we
Killed 3 people.
killed 3 people. So the way that my thought process, I actually started the church planning conversation many years before we actually planted. And it was 4 years, something like that, a couple years at here, doing a couple different things. Started a church plant that never really got off the ground, and then wound up planting here. We looked to go and plant through NAM at one point. Me and my wife did in Indianapolis. You know, and at that particular time, NAM was real focused, and I guess they still are. You planted in Send Cities. There's 40 some odd Send Cities across the country, or whatever they are now. I don't know. And that's where you planted. You know. For a very practical, my daughter went to USM. We came down here on vacation, and we loved it here. And we thought that at some point in time we would move to retire. And we were in the midst of all these different locations. I had a buddy that wanted me to come down and co-plant in Columbus, Mississippi with him. Batesville, Mississippi was an opportunity. Denver, Colorado was an opportunity. Although NAM wanted me to bring 150 people from Mississippi to Denver, Colorado to plant, which was unrealistic. So just all these conversations. But all that to say, I was driving home one day, and I don't know, I was praying through where to go, and the Gulf Coast came up, and my wife, I didn't say anything to her, and a couple of days later, she's literally cooking spaghetti in the kitchen, says, what about just going to the coast? And so we prayed through that. We made a couple of visits on our own. I visited with a few pastors here on the coast. I visited with the association on the coast. Where's the greatest needs at? Where's the church planting needs at? And at the time, none of us were on the table as a plant on the coast. I think it'd been a while since the coast had a plant. I could be wrong, so somebody can correct me. But none of them were on the table at the moment. And so we really just started looking around areas, and we made probably 7 visits to the coast and stayed in different cities and different places, and decided that Long Beach was a place that we could go. The demographic of Long Beach, I mean, that's part of it, like demographics too. Like, I'm an older guy. We're empty nesters. My family's long gone. I don't have kids, and the church is a reflection of that too. Like, we don't have a lot of children in our church because it's a reflection of who I am, right, and who we are.
That's why everybody's crazy.
Huh?
That's why everybody's crazy, Roger.
Well, maybe so. But so our church makeup is reflects us too as well. And we have a few children, but we don't have as many as these guys do. We just prayed through it really, really hard, and God sort of revealed it to myself and my wife, Michelle. We decided, and that's how we ended up. That's the story.
Yeah. How have y'all handled moving within the community? Because I know, Rod, like you were meeting in Anniston, but you're not really close to Anniston anymore. And I think, Adam, you've moved kind of within the Biloxi area or Ocean Springs area as well. How have y'all handled that?
And so when you're asking that, what are you thinking is the issues that might be there?
Well, like who you're trying to reach certainly changes. Like
You talking about like strategy in different places?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great question.
I'm not going to have as good of an answer because our location didn't really change much.
Okay.
We moved from one exit to another, just 2 miles apart, 4 miles apart, something like that. So we moved really close to the D'Iberville exit,
Yeah.
just south of that, and then we moved over to technically we're in St. Martin, but again, right off the interstate. And so with the interstate, when you're next to the interstate, you're more regional. And so we shifted our region slightly. And one of the things that it actually gave us more access to Van Cleve area, which doesn't, at least in between like Latimer, Van Cleve area, until you get to like First Baptist Van Cleve and those places, there aren't really many thriving established churches, which is the reason why we went to D'Iberville. The reason we went to D'Iberville is because we looked at map, and we saw that that was one of the fastest growing areas of Mississippi Gulf Coast, residentially, commercially, those two exits, and we just said there needs to be more established churches there, and we got to start one, and so yeah, so our move wasn't all that huge with people and demographics and whatnot.
And
Gave us an Ocean Springs address.
one thing as well, and I'm gonna bounce back to the question I had, then I'll come back to you. I really had a lot of input from Steve Minningham about where he thought the next plant should be. And that played a pretty large factor into why we went to Long Beach. Because it was sort of stagnant, but it's growing, so you need a lot more residential. We've moved 3 times, well, 4 times if you count my house, but 3 times, but we've been on the same street, less than 2 miles apart, so our targets have never changed.
Ours did, significantly. We started out in my house, which is north of I-10, knowing that so our first, everybody's mentioned maps. Our first target on the map was exactly where we are right now. But we said, let's go to option 2, because there was a church plant in our facility that we're at right now. And that was the Bridge Community Church, Curtis Davis, their church was there. And so we're like, well, we're not, they're pretty new, so we want them to do well. So what's our next target? And that was in the College Park area down there. I spent a lot of time down there when about 15 years ago or so, I was pastor of a church down there, and just tons of people just going down Pass Road, and some great churches down there, but there's so much more of a need down there for another great church. And so that's when we started pouring into Anniston Avenue Elementary School. We did a really good job of just serving crazy, like just doing some really cool stuff at that school. And then we started meeting at the school. And we had a lot of people in that immediate area. And then when we moved from there were some people and our move from the school was totally COVID. I tell people that Hurricane COVID wiped out our facility, because it did. And it blew up our model, and I lost probably 70-80% of our people. I lost the other staff that I had. And then we didn't know what to do, because we didn't have a facility. So when people were starting to get back together, the school was not an option for us. And so we started borrowing space from another church over in that area. And then when we moved up where we are now, we didn't know if we were going to lose some people. We lost some people. And so, yeah, I think that we just want to really, I guess, I don't know, this is kind of a corny way to say it, but we want to exegete the immediate culture. Yeah. And see what do we need to do. When we were at the school, we're like, how do we reach the teachers, and how do we reach the students, and how do we reach the neighbors, like literally across the street. And they're like, we don't like church people, and don't come here, that kind of thing. We're like, well, we love you. And then we were trying to do that there. And then now we're in the North Biloxi Wool Market area. It's just totally different. So we understand that we want to, figure out how, we got 5 acres right there. And how do we grow a great church on that little corner that ministers to families and people and kids? It's not totally known yet, but my wife is about to go before the school board, and she's fixing to start at North Wool Market Middle School up there teaching. And that's kind of how we're like, how do we get in the neighborhoods, in the community, and how do we move some of our people up that way? So, yeah, it has changed a lot for us. We've had to kind of reevaluate, how do we do that? How do we grow a great church everywhere we've been? Because it feels like we've planted about 5 different churches.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things I want to say, and then ask you another question. So one would be that I think every church can connect with church planting, in that all it takes is us start to pray for one of you guys. To say, as a church family, you know what, if we start praying for one of our church planters, whether it's one of you guys or whether it's anywhere in the state or in a Sin City, if we find a church plant that we say, we connect with that, let's start as a church family praying. That begins even just the process of us, why are we even praying for a church planter? What does that mean? All of a sudden, even that language begins. And so I would say to all of us, we need to be finding, if nothing else, if no other connection, where's a church plant, close or far, or multiple church plants that we can start being prayer partners with, and then build from there.
One of the most encouraging things that I have happen in my church planting journey is that there's a guy by the name of Bubba Harris, and he's from Hernando, Mississippi. He calls me every week, and he lets me know how he's prayed for me this week. Most impactful thing that anybody has done.
And so we as pastors can do that, but I would say even if we've got a prayer warrior in our church, to say, hey, here's a name of someone that I want you praying for, and let them know you're praying, and let them know how you're praying. I think that's a great thing for us to do. So I think that would be one thing I wanted to say based on what we've been talking about. The other, I think, is to lead to this question. As you just said, Rod, we want to exegete our own community, and then how do we pastor well? How are we a church healthy and thriving in an area that's caring for that? So my question would be, what are things you've learned? Because this is something that's true for all of us, no matter where we are, right? In the churches that I have served, established the 2 churches I served as senior pastor in, they were not exegeting their neighborhood by the time I got there, right? At some point, all of our churches planted and started, and you look back at the history, and they said, there needs to be a church here, and let's get after it, and let's go care about the community, and it's grown and it's established. But by the time we get there, some of us realize they stopped exegeting in regard to the mission of the community, and now we're decided, well, we'll reach past our community to the people that used to be here. We want to keep them coming here, and all of a sudden we're not doing well in that. So what are things you've learned as a church planter that could also work well for established churches?
I would hang out where you are. So like for us in Diamond Head, we've learned, not only have we adopted the school, but you don't really get to hang out there because it's weird to hang out there during the school hours. So we hang out in Diamond Head there's like 4 pools. Now, of course, we're a younger demographic, but we'll go hang out at the pools. And so we've learned some of the stuff through conversation, like what those families like, what they don't like, what they think about religion, what they think about Jesus. Get your families involved. And so like our families started to get involved with some of those folks. And then, so yeah, I would say like get involved in the community. It's more than just going to the grocery store there every week, unless you're forming relationships and you know the lunch lady at the slicing meat, and the cake maker, and the flour maker, and all that kind of jazz. But finding places where you can hang out in your community, like
It's presence, right?
yeah, being present.
Figure out where you need to be present at, and then be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my church all the time, because we have people who come in from other church contexts, and they immediately start asking, or start saying, at my past church, we had this event that we used to do at our church, and it was great, and we had all these people come in, and it was wonderful, and I don't, what I'm thinking, I don't say this because I just know what the answer is going to be probably. I was like, well, how much impact did you actually have with that? You know, did you see any families start worshiping God regularly at your church or any church after that? And that's a lot of resources, a lot of work. And I already know that's the case, typically. What I usually say is, and listen, one of the things about being a church planter is that you have to think outside the traditional established church box. Because a lot of the established church traditions don't work. Because you don't have a facility, you don't have the resources, you don't have the people. Like, you don't have those people who've always done that job, and you can just trust that job's going to be done. You know, and so you have to find that person, train that person up for every little tiny thing. As simple as collecting the money that's given on Sunday mornings. I never knew that was like we just never even thought about it. I never even thought about it at my last church. And that first time someone said, I want to give to your church, how do I do that? I'm like, I don't know. I never thought about that before. I literally dumped out a box of pens and said, you can put it right here. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I think what we do is we think, so church planters think differently. And so one of the things that we can do is we can actually help establish churches or revitalize churches and say, hey, this is how we do things. Like, for instance, I tell my church members, listen, get involved with the community. Sign your kid up for the community T-ball league. Sign your, not using your kids, but in the sense of do things. Sign up for your local, I don't know what it is, Rotary or whatever it is. Be involved in the community as much as you can be. And I tell all my church members this. We don't have to create an event. Be involved, get involved, and share the gospel there. Gain relationships, and with the intention of sharing the gospel. And our community, our cities, offer so many opportunities to be already there. We don't have to create new opportunities. But that's not the way a lot of people think. I've told that to so many more traditional established church members, and they're like, never thought about that before. And y'all might be out there thinking that, but I guarantee there are a lot of people in your church who might be thinking that. And so you can also utilize us. Maybe bring us in. We can say those words to your people. And, we could help. There might be also with revitalization, I'm going to say this quick, there are problems with our current churches in their polity and their bylaws and their structure. Personally, I did not start my church as the typical Southern Baptist church because I just see a different biblical model.
Like what?
Well, first of all, elders. So Baptists got away from having a plurality of elders that work together and lead the church together. I think that is biblical. I think it's irrefutable. And most Baptist churches don't have that. They have either a committee-led structure or deacon-led structure. A lot of churches have started to thankfully move away from a deacon-led. The deacons are starting to serve more. But they still have a committee-led structure. Which I guess is their version of maybe congregationalism. But I think a elder-led congregationalism is the biblical model, and that concept is foreign, I think. And if you try to go in and obviously do that day one, it's going to fail miserably. But again, you disciple them. I have a boring answer for almost all these things. Teach the Bible. Because what has motivated me to do all this stuff is seeing it in the Scripture. That's it. And if you can teach people in the Scripture, and then they go, wait a second, we see elders all over the place, and it's in the plural, always in the plural. Why don't we have this? Great question. Let's do that, And just simple things like that. Teaching people the Bible and saying, this is why I do things, and you can do them too. I'm starting to ramble now, so I'm stopping.
We actually got two families from being involved in the community. One from soccer games, and then one from my wife. I don't know if any of y'all have wives that do Facebook Marketplace, but we're always either I'm getting sent to the weird spots in town or other towns, or people come to my house, and we actually got a family came there at the house. And they saw my Jesus hat, and they're like, "Hey, believe in Jesus?" Yeah. And where do you go to church? I'm glad you asked. So yeah, be involved in the community. And your wives can actually use Facebook Marketplace as a mission field.
We've done a lot of large events, and I can't count on one hand the amount of people that visited our church after that event. But I can count on both hands every time we've met somebody and invited them personally. Whether it was me or Michelle or one of our members or whatever. For us, in my experience, it's the one-on-one. It's never the large thing that takes all the capital that you have as a church and just doesn't work. So we're like Adam, we're not gonna invest in it because it's not effective. And every other church has an Easter egg hunt on the town green in Long Beach. So why would we do it, right? I mean, anyway, it's kind of weird.
And so I would say, you hear some of these guys, and you may say, I want to hear more about that. And so, we're out of time, but so you talk to them. Again, their contact information's out there, their website stuff's out there, you can find them, pray for them. I do want us to end by asking them how we can pray for them.